Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today in the Dungeon Dive, we are going to take a look at League of Dungeoneers again, a little bit more detail, and we are going to dive into the standees, the Bestiary, and the Companions expansion. These are three things that I think are pretty cool about League of Dungeoneers, and I think all three of these things kind of solve some issues that I have with some of these big, epic, huge box dungeon crawls. One of those being the standees. They take up so much less space than miniatures. I don't have to paint them in order for them to look good, and it did help keep the price of this game down quite a bit. As far as the companions go, what I think this solves is the need for playing with a full party of 4 complex heroes. With the companions, with the mercenaries that you can hire in this game, you can play the game with just 1 or 2 full-fledged user-created heroes, and then you can fill out the rest of your party with easier-to-manage companions, making the bookkeeping take less time. I do appreciate that. I'm not quite sure if it'll work with maybe just 1 full-fledged hero and 3 mercenaries. Maybe just 4 mercenaries. I'm not quite sure how that would work. The main thing I think that might fall apart with that kind of situation is as the game progresses, as the quests maybe get more difficult. I'm not sure how the mercenaries will stand up. That is something that will have to be discovered as time goes on. And the bestiary. This game has a fantastic bestiary. It may not be quite as robust as Dungeon Universalis. However, I think it is more usable, maybe a little bit more user-friendly, and just easier to set up and get to the table. And what this solves is a lot of dungeon crawls, a lot of boxed dungeon crawl games. One place where they fall short is the bestiary. You end up seeing the same kinds of enemies over and over again, or just there isn't enough variety. This game has a ton of variety in the enemies that you will be facing, and it really makes me excited to dive into the dungeons to see what kind of adversaries I will be up against. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today is actually the Companions expansion. And so this is the expansion that has all of your mercenaries that you will be able to hire when you go back to a settlement in between villages. And you can keep the same mercenaries from game to game, from dungeon to dungeon, or you could probably cycle them out. The more powerful the mercenary is, the higher their wage is to hire. And there are a whole bunch of different mercenaries. Now, there are named mercenaries and there are generic mercenaries. The generic mercenaries will be in 3 different skill levels, from novice to experienced to veteran. And on the table right now, what you see are all of the named mercenaries and their standees, and we'll take a look at those. So there are a number of named mercenaries. Then there are some named mercenaries that were created by Kickstarter backers, and then the generic mercenaries. There are also dogs that you can hire, so you can have pets, and you can also use familiars. So why bring a mercenary instead of a character? Mercenaries have fewer stats and fight like the enemies. That makes them somewhat faster to play, and since they do not gain XP, lose sanity, or have area-specific armor, they require less bookkeeping. The price range varies quite a lot, so make sure you bring mercenaries that suit the level of your characters. So the mercenaries have a condensed skill set. If we take a look at a character sheet for League of Dungeoneers, you can see how quite complex it is. We have strength, we have constitution, dexterity, wisdom, resilience, HP. We have all of these different skills here: combat skill, range skill, dodge, pick locks, barter, heal, alchemy, perception, foraging. We have places for weapons, places for different armor slots, head, arms, torso, shield, and legs, different kinds of gear. And then on the back of the character sheets, we have all kinds of different places for other pieces of gear and other items and things to keep track of, such as your perks and your talents. So characters in League of Dungeoneers are pretty complex. And I do not want to play an entire party of 4 of these complex characters. So that's why I would turn to mercenaries. Mercenaries have a very stripped down set of abilities and skills. They have a combat skill, a range skill, an extra damage, resilience, a modifier to hit roll when an enemy attacks them. They have a luck, natural armor, movement, a dexterity, and an energy. Energy in this game is a currency that you can spend to trigger your perks. And then some of the mercenaries will also have special abilities that are going to be listed on their card. So mercenaries don't get more gear as they progress. So any loot you find belongs to your main heroes. I'm sure you could probably house rule it a little bit to where if you wanted to start keeping track of some more things about your mercenaries, if you wanted to introduce a little more bookkeeping to your mercenaries, you could probably start modifying them a little bit if you wanted to keep them in your party. As your heroes gain reputation, it will become easier and cheaper for you to hire certain mercenaries as you go to settlements. As you lose reputation, then it will be harder for you to gain your mercenaries. And when you go into a settlement, you have to stay at the inn. And then I think you have a chance of randomly drawing 3 different mercenaries that are going to be available to you to take on your quests. And then we get into all of the various mercenaries here, such as Waggot, Neck Snapper, Desmond, Raventide, Grom, Hornbrow. And some of the mercenaries are more complex than others. Some of them have little charts that you need to roll on. Some of them might have some unique special abilities, and some of them do share the same kinds of abilities that you might find on the monsters in the Bestiary. And the monster stats and rules, this is very similar to Warhammer Quest, where you will have a list of all of the different abilities that the monsters have. Things that make the monsters unique from one another. Those same special abilities might apply to some of the mercenaries. So let's take a look here at the named mercenaries. First up, we have Lanthrum Silvermoon. He is a thief. Looks like an elf thief there. So all of these named mercenaries have their own unique standee with their name and unique art. That is awesome. I love that. So as you can see, Lanthrum costs 35 gold. He comes with 1 point of armor and 14 health. He has a perception picklock skill, so he's a pretty good thief there. He has a 65% chance of picking locks and disarming traps, so that's pretty good. He would be a very handy thief to take with you. If picklock fails, increase the threat. So the threat is a status that you'll be keeping track of as you go through dungeons, and the higher the threat, the more danger your heroes are going to have to face. But he has clever fingers, quick fingers, and he is armed with a dagger and a short bow, a cloak, and lock picks and a bedroll. Okay, then we have Marla Mortcombe. She is a rogue there. So there is a distinction in League of Dungeoneers between rogues and thieves. Thieves are your more typical lock-picking, treasure finding thief, whereas rogues are your typical kind of fighters, ne'er-do-wells, people, mercenaries and hired guns, that kind of thing. They are your swashbuckling heroes, you could say. I think in like D&D, they've kind of started to incorporate the rogue and thief class into a single unit. But here we have Marla Mortcombe. She has perception and foraging. She has a hunter's eye perk, may shoot 2 arrows when performing a ranged attack. Both arrows must target the same enemy. She comes equipped with a crossbow and a dagger and a bedroll. She costs 35. She has 1 point of armor and 10 health. And here we have an interesting combo. We have Faerun, the Ranger, and Rain, Faerun's loyal canine companion. I did not see a standee that is special for rain, so I just use one of the dog standees there. And then here is Faerun there, another ranger, or a ranger, I should say, with a perception of 60, an alchemy of 60, and foraging of 60. That's really good. That's 60% chance of doing anything to do, having anything to do with perception, mixing potions, or finding things when you're out in the wilderness. Faerun may only gather ingredients in the wild and cannot mix potions. So you can't gather ingredients, though. He comes with a broadsword, a longbow, bedroll, rain. Whenever you hire Faerun, rain is included for free. And here we have Rain, his canine companion. He can do attacks. He can ignore the enemy's zone of control. He can leap, and he has perfect hearing. So yeah, pretty cool little combination there. All right, next up we have Three-Fingered Alley. As the name implies, Three-Fingered Alley is a thief, and that is a super cool standee with a cool pose there. She is 35 to higher, 1 gold, 12 hit points, perception of 60, picklocks of 60, clever fingers, 25 on all picklock or disarm traps. That is great. That is a perk, so it will cost energy to use, but when you really need something opened, she might be the one you want to call. She has a backstabber talent, so she ignores armor when attacking from behind. She's armed with a dagger. She's got some lock picks and a bedroll. And then here we have Corbina Tallgrove, another thief here. Looks like an elf thief. Perception 55, picklocks 50, cents for gold. When rolling on the treasure table, Corbina may subtract 1 from the roll. In League of Dungeoneers, lower rolls are almost always better. A loot goblin, when told to roll for the amount of gold, Corbina may re-roll the result. So take Corbina if you really want to find a lot of gold. All right, here we have Elmeth Deltroft, or Deltroft, I think, a warrior priest. Our first warrior priest here, perception of 40, battle prayers of 50. He comes equipped with, it looks like 2 prayers, the power of Iffy and Smite. I think that should say Smite the heretics. There are a few little spelling errors. Something that I think the rules and the cards probably do need one more pass of editing, maybe for a second edition. But he also has a battle hammer, a shield, and he has 2 armor and costs 30 gold. And then here we have Kalen Greywing, a barbarian. I really do appreciate that there are a mix of male and female mercenaries and heroes in this game. It's a very diverse cast, and that is something that I do appreciate. So as a barbarian, she hits hard. She's got a combat rating of 60. Combat skill of 60, so a 60% chance to hit. That's pretty good. Her first attack in battle costs 0, so she can 0 action points. So she can actually take an additional action to attack. That's great. She's armed with a great sword, and she has 3 armor there. Okay, and then we have here another thief. We have Durnir, a deep delver. And looks like a dwarf thief. That is some great art there on that standee. Absolutely love that. Yeah, even the back. Man, that is so cool. These are some of the best standees I've ever seen. Perception, picklock, special, a 75% chance of identifying magic items. Legendary items are auto-identified. So when in League of Dungeoneers, when you find something magical, it needs to be identified before you can use it. If you are going on a quest to retrieve some kind of magical item, you may want to hunt down Durnir Deep Delver to hire. One thing I just thought of, and I think this would be a very cool house rule to create, is if you took all of these named NPCs, all of these named mercenaries, and established little backstories for them, and set them in their various hometowns, their home villages and settlements around the land of League of Dungeoneers. And that way you could have maybe a better chance of finding Durner Deep Delver if you, say, visited Whiteport. Now, he may not always be there because these are mercenaries. Sometimes they are going out on their own quests. I should say. But it would be cool if you could go to their hometown to have a better chance to find them. Or maybe if you went on a quest from Whiteport, where maybe Durner Deep Delver was from, one of the quests associated with Whiteport, you might stumble upon Durner out there doing his own thing. So having kind of a persistent world to these characters and their own travels in the land is something that you could implement into your games of League of Dungeoneers. And I think that sounds like a fantastic idea. That is definitely something I'm going to visit as we play the game. Here we have Josep Nahas, a ranger. Pretty cool looking dude there. Perception 50, foraging 50, special 20, foraging in the ancient lands. So the ancient lands are the lands to the south. I'm not showing those on the camera now. Those are the desert lands. Those are where you want to go when you've gained some more experience. It's a little more dangerous in the Southlands. And so he would be somebody that you might want to take down there because it is hard to forage in the desert. So he would help you survive as you're traveling around the desert. He's got Hunter's Eye, perfect shot. He has a scimitar and a short bow. He costs 35, has 2 armor and 13 health. And here we have this big boy. Wagget Neck Snapper, some kind of ogre you can hire. Now, I wonder what his backstory is. I wonder why he came around. But he's got a perception of 20. He's large, so he's easier to hit when enemies attack him. With ranged weapons. He has a sweeping strike, so he can do kind of a sweeping strike and push people back. He's armed with a warhammer, a bedroll, and he's a big boy, so he's got 24 HP. That is great. Take Wagget with you when you need a tank. And here we go. Tau Terranhell. Now, I'm sure there are probably rules where you could play with permadeath with these named mercenaries, where if they die, they are out of that party's campaign for good. Or you could play to where they do go back to a settlement and heal up, and maybe they are available to be hired again at a later date. But yeah, Terranhell, Warrior Priest, Perception 40, Battle Prayers 65. Battle Prayers are what you need to roll when you're trying to cast a prayer or a war priest spell. He has Bringer of Light, Litany of Mathia, Power of Faith, and Be Gone. He costs 40, or she, I should say, and has 3 armor and 14 hit points, and she comes with a battle axe. So yeah, pretty cool. That's a powerful war priest there. We have Doug, the Feral Barbarian. Look at that dude. Super, super cool. And Doug, the Feral Barbarian, has a perception of 30. He can go on a frenzy, and he has a great axe and a bedroll. Very kind of basic warrior here, barbarian. Cost 20, 1 armor, 15 hit points. And here we have Desmond Raventide, a fighter. And the perception of 40 may act as a call to action, may activate the hero. So as a perk, you could spend a point of energy and Desmond could allow another hero to take an action. Shield Bash, Greatsword, a cloak, +1 armor from behind. So that cloak is pretty hardy there. A bedroll costs 25 to hire Desmond. And coming up next, we have Grom Hornbrow, a fighter. Is that kind of an old dwarf fighter there, or an old man fighter? He has claustrophobia, so -10 to all stats and skills while in a corridor. This guy has seen some action, probably seen some terrible things happen in the various dungeons around the land here. He has a battle axe, a shield, lockpicks, trap disarming kit, perception, and he's pretty good at picking locks for a fighter. So that's pretty interesting. And he does have a special card here for some rules. Before any outdoor battles and before entering a dungeon, roll on the table below. This guy gets drunk a lot and he likes to drink his problems away. He is an old grizzled veteran who is probably trying to forget his past. And so you need to roll on his sobriety chart before you really know how Grom Hornbrow will act. Okay, and here we have Stefan, the apprentice wizard. And she comes with 3 spells here: Flare, Healing, and Shield. She has a maximum spell uses of 4. I believe that means that she can cast 4 spells per dungeon. A staff, a cloak, a bedroll. She costs 30, has 0 armor, and only 11 hit points there. Okay, and then here we have Jadra, the Jadra Rayren. She kind of looks like a vampire type wizard here. She has perception, arcane arts of 70 spells. She has flare, slow, fireball, seduce, and vampiric touch. So yes, she is a kind of a vampire wizard there. She can maximum spell use of 6. She has inner power. +1 damage with magic missile style spells. So that would be a ranged weapon spell. So probably fireball or flare or something like that. She has a backstabber talent, a death lament talent. She has a hate talent. So she hates vampires. She hates her own kind. What an interesting, and she costs 0, huh? I wonder what's up with her. Jadra Rayren. Very interesting. I need to look up more about Jadra Rayren. Or Jadra Rayren, I should say. And a Valerie White Scribe. Okay, an alchemist here. Perception, alchemy, and heal. She can brew 1 random potion and 1 chosen potion. She is a master healer, a pitcher. She can throw potions. So there are a lot of potions in League of Dungeoneers. I believe there are something like 20 or 30 potions, and some of them can act like ranged weapons, like grenades. So you can toss potions of acid. And the pitcher perk allows you to be better at throwing potions. That's super cool. She comes equipped with supreme healing potions, ×2 potions of the player's choice. Now, I believe that, I'm not sure if this is a rule, but this is probably something I will play with, where every time you leave a dungeon, you take a mercenary on a quest, they use up all their gear, and you go back to a settlement. If you just pay their price again to hire them again, then they automatically get to replenish all of the things that they have. Okay, here we have Brom the Mad. Brom the Mad is an alchemist, another alchemist here. Perception 45, alchemy 60, brewing. He comes with 1 random potion and 1 chosen potion. He is a good healer. He has powerful potions, so it enhances the potion. Enhancing potions grants an additional +5 bonus. Fits. On a scenario roll of 5, Brom has 1 of his fits. So Brom also has some special rules here. So he can have 1 of his fits. He comes with a short sword and 6 potions. Player's choice except potion of experience. So you can bring 6 potions of your choice when you hire Brom the Mad. That is super cool. Potions in this game are very powerful and very important. Layla Star Oak, another thief here. A perception 35, picklocks 55, foraging, a sprint, perfect aim, hide in the shadows, comes with a dagger and a crossbow pistol. And here we have Archibald the Red, another alchemist. I think I'll hire an alchemist as one of my mercenaries. Alchemy 75, brewing 1 random potion, 1 chosen potion, master healer, powerful potions, enhancing potions grants an additional +5. But he doesn't actually come with any potions, so he would not be one that I would look to hire. I think I would be more interested in hiring a Valerie White Scribe. All right, and here we have Captain Alan Black, a wizard, a pirate wizard there. Cost 45, perception 57, arcane 57. That's a pretty low arcane skill. Comes with a fireball, flare, gust of wind, blind, and stun. Maximum spell uses of 6. Discard 2d20 coins when boarding a ship. Huh, there are ships. I didn't even know there were ships. I wonder if you can take ships from one port to another. I'll have to research that here. A natural leader talent, sense of gold talent, comes with a rapier, a cloak, and a bedroll. Captain Alan Black seems pretty cool. And finally, our last mercenary to take a look at today is August the Pale here. And another wizard, Perception 50, Arcane Arts 75. That is great. Comes with healing, fireball, slow, vampiric touch. He can use 8 spells. He's immune to fear and terror from undead. Has inner power plus 1d6 damage when using the fireball. Has a d8 staff. Comes with a bedroll, 2 points of armor. August the Pale is definitely a wizard that I would want to hire. Very, very cool. All right, so that's all of the named mercenaries. And then you also have all of your cards for your generic mercenaries. And like I said, each of the classes is represented as a mercenary, and there are 3 different skill levels. So we have Veteran Alchemist, Experienced Alchemist, Novice Alchemist, and then the same for Wizards, Rangers, Barbarians, Fighters, Warrior Priests, and Thieves. All right, let's real quick, let's take a look at the standees that you can use for your heroes and other named NPCs that you might encounter. So first up, we have our War Priest here. There's a little halfling War Priest. I love this War Priest here. If I make a War Priest, I'm definitely going to use this Elf War Priest. We have another Elf War Priest. Halfling War Priest. And a Dwarf War Priest. That is pretty cool too. And then we have these guys who look kind of like more Paladin-esque to humans. And another Dwarf there. All right, and then here we have our Barbarians. This Dwarf Barbarian should look somewhat familiar for fans of a Warhammer Quest. Looks like a Troll Slayer there. Even it's got the striped shorts. Definitely an homage to Warhammer Quest there. A Human Barbarian. We've got Halfling Barbarians. I think that is awesome. Halfling Barbarian holding a huge claymore. A Dwarf Barbarian, Female Barbarian, a Human Barbarian, an Elf Barbarian, and another Halfling Barbarian, and another Elf Barbarian there. All right, so those are all of our Barbarians. And then we have our Warriors here. So we've got an Elf and a Halfling Warrior. Again, front and back facing. Here we have a Dwarf Warrior and a Human Warrior. We have a Human Warrior and a Dwarf Warrior again. And then our last Elf and Halfling Warrior. That Halfling Warrior is cool. I love the little Halfling standees. They're super cool. They're some of my favorite ones. All right, then what do we have up next? We have our Alchemists. This is a badass Alchemist here. That's actually one of the mercenaries. That is an unnamed mercenary. Human Alchemist, an Elf Alchemist. There are a few standees that you can use for your generic mercenaries. You could also use those as a hero too. Nothing to stop you there. A Dwarf and an Elf. We have here another Dwarf and a Halfling Alchemist. And then a Human Alchemist and a Halfling Alchemist. Okay, next up, we will take a look at our Rangers here. So Rangers, we have a Dwarf Ranger and an Elf Ranger. We have a Dwarf Ranger and a Halfling Ranger. Here we have a Human Ranger, great classic Human Ranger with the green cloak, love it. And another Halfling Ranger. And finally, another Human Ranger and another Elf Ranger. Coming up next, we'll take a look at our wizards here. So we have a Dwarf Wizard and an Elf Wizard. We have our Human Wizard. That guy looks great. I love that Human Wizard. And another Halfling Wizard, or a Halfling Wizard, I should say. An Elf Wizard and a Human Wizard. I love that. That's a great standee. And finally, a Dwarf Wizard and a little Halfling Wizard with his little hat and little magical flowers there. Pretty cool. very jaunty. And now we have our thieves. So here we have an elf thief and a human thief. We have another human thief and a halfling thief. This dwarf thief is awesome. That is great. And another halfling thief. Super cool standee there. We have an elf thief and a dwarf thief. And finally, I actually have another mercenary standee mixed in there. And finally, we have our rogues. So we have here our halfling rogue and a dwarf rogue, a human rogue and a dwarf rogue, a human rogue and an elf rogue, and finally our elf rogue and our last halfling rogue. All right, so next up we're going to take a look at some of the monsters and the bestiary. Okay, now let's dive into the bestiary. So like I said at the beginning of this video, this is one of the best bestiaries I have ever seen in a single box dungeon crawl game. In my unboxing that I hope you watched, released a few days ago, I was wondering if there was a detailed alphabetical list of all of the bestiary monsters included. And I am super happy to say that there is. So in the bestiary here, we have an alphabetical list of all of the main monsters. Now, the monsters that aren't included on this list are the special quest monsters or bosses or mini bosses and that kind of thing. But these are all of the regular monsters that you will be able to battle against as you dive into the dungeons and have skirmishes in the overland. So we have bandits, bandits leaders, banshees, bat swarms, beastmen, beastmen chieftains, beastmen guards, berserkers, bloated demons, blood demons, cave bears, cave goblins, centaurs, cockatrices, common trolls, dark elf, assassin, captain, sniper, warlock, direwolf, dragons, driders, earth elementals, ettins, fallen knight, fire elemental, frogling, gargoyle, gecko, gecko assassin, ghost, ghoul, giant, centipede, leech, pox rat, rat, scorpion, snake, spider, toad, wolf, snake, and a gigantic spider, a gnoll sergeant, a gnoll shaman, goblin shaman. We have a greater demon, a griffin, a harpy, a hydra, lesser plague demon, a lurker, a medusa, mimic, minotaur skeleton, mummy priest, mummy queen, naga, a necromancer, an ogre berserker, ogre chieftain, orc brute, orc chieftain, orc shaman, plague demon, psyker, raptor, river troll, salamander, satyr, saurian elite, saurian priest, saurian war chief, shambler, skeleton, slime, sphinx, stone goblin, stone troll, tomb guardian, vampire fledgling, warlock, water elemental, werewolf, white, wind elemental, wraith, wyvern, zombie, and zombie ogre. Whew, okay, that is a lot of monsters to fight in a game. And most of those monsters are going to be divided into a number of different factions and groups. We have undead, magic, bandits, dark elves, orcs, goblins, reptiles, and beasts. Some of the magic monsters are actually incorporated into the lookup charts for the other beasts. Some of the magic monsters can actually be summoned by wizards. The magic monsters do not have their own lookup table, so those are kind of just dispersed with all the others. However, on that master sheet, if you ever needed to look up what faction a monster was a part of, so you could find it in your storage solution. So we have beasts, we have dark elves, we have magic, we have undead, we have reptiles, we have bandits and brigands, and orcs and goblins. If you needed to have a reminder of which monster is in which faction for storage solutions, you could easily look it up on this table. You could also easily look up any stats or anything you needed. This is super, super handy. I love this. I do feel like at least one of the factions, and that is the beasts. I am going to subdivide the beasts into more like animalistic beasts and more humanoid beasts. And we'll take a closer look at that and talk a little bit about that, why I will do that. I feel like the beasts are just kind of, there's just too many, and lumping them all together isn't very useful. But in the bestiary here, we will have just a brief introduction to each of the major factions, your bandits and brigands, orcs, goblins, dark elves, undead, your ancient lands, your reptiles, your beasts. And then here we have a little chapter on the exotic monsters, some of the monsters that maybe just aren't your typical orc and that kind of thing, like your tomb guardians or plague demons, slimes, psychers, driders. And then we have a detailed examination of the monster cards, what all of the numbers mean and how to use them, and then how to use all of your monster stats and your monster rules here. And so then we have an alphabetical list of all of your special rules, very similar to the same kind of list that is in Warhammer Quest. So this whole bestiary book is a lot like that monster and bestiary section from Warhammer Quest. All kinds of cool abilities, just bones or a leech ability, a magic being, poisonous, camouflage, a demon, ethereal, frenzy, ghostly howl. Yeah, just all kinds of super cool things. Then we have our monster table, our huge monster table. And then we get into our various monster behaviors. So each of the monsters at the top of their card will come with a keyword that tells you which of the behavior charts you will use for their AI. And so we have our humanoid with close combat weapon, humanoid with missile weapons. We have our beasts, we have our lower undead, our higher undead, and also magic users. And so that should give you enough AI, enough variation in AI to have interesting combat encounters. Okay, so here and on this page here is your encounter tables rules. And this small section also describes how the game levels up, how the game scales with higher level characters and higher level parties. I wish that this section was actually in the core rulebook as well. It is not. So I was trying to figure out how this game scales. I didn't know to go to the bestiary. I asked Michael, the designer, and he said, oh, it's in the bestiary. So just know that if you're reading the rulebook and you're wondering, well, how does this game scale? It's right here. And the way you do that is it's determined by the level of your party. And you determine the level of your party by the level of the highest level hero. So if you have a 3rd level hero in a party and that's the highest level, you are a level 3 party. When you go on a quest, the quest is going to tell you which monster table, which faction you are fighting. So if you were fighting on beasts as a level 1 party, you roll a d20 and you have a chance of encountering anything from 1 to 20. So that would be giant rats, bat swarms, giant rats, giant leeches, satyrs, snakes, beastmen, gnolls, wolves, more beastmen, more satyrs, or a guard. So that would be the different enemies that you could fight. Any level above 1, you start adding a 10 per level to that d20 roll. So if you are a level 3 party, you will be adding 10, 20 to that roll. So then you will be looking at higher up on each chart, and as you go up on each table, then the monsters get more powerful. So that's how the combat scales in League of Dungeoneers. It's very simple, it's very straightforward. You don't need to put a lot of thought into it. I like this system here. So we have our tables for our beasts, we have our tables for our undead, we have our tables for bandits and brigands, table for orcs and goblins, a table for reptiles, which also includes amphibians, and a table for dark elves, and when you are in the ancient lands, and that's that desert land to the south there. Once again, your magic monsters do not have their own table, but you will find these monsters dispersed within the other tables, things like lurkers, blood demons, stone golems, psychers, your various elementals, and your various demons and elementals, basically. But in your undead, so your undead is one of the major factions here, and it is kind of the major faction that you will be fighting against in the first little campaign of the game. And so you will have things like tomb guardians there, perhaps some mummies. I love these guys here, the minotaur skeletons, ghosts, and various ghouls and zombies and vampires and that kind of thing. So dire wolves are there, ghosts, ghouls, mummies, minotaur skeletons, mummy queens, necromancers, skeletons, banshees, wights, wraiths, zombies, zombie ogres, and vampire fledglings. So lots of cool and undead monsters to fight. I really like these tomb guardians a lot. I think they are pretty cool. And then we have, let's see, we have some bandits and brigands. And bandits and brigands, that also includes things that you may not think of as bandits, but just think of these as kind of like wild warriors. So things like ogres, maybe some bandits might actually hire or enslave some ogres to fight for them. Perhaps an ogre chieftain there, or maybe that ogre there. That is an ogre berserker, and that is an ogre there. I love those standees. Those are super cool. But then you also have things like warlocks, might be a brigand or a bandit. You have your berserkers and your typical bandits, and there are also some fallen knights, and there are also some bandit leaders there. So in your bandit factions, you have bandits, leaders, ogre chieftains, berserkers, ogres, a giant. So one of these big boys here, this giant. Look how big the giant is, even compared to a big ogre. That is super cool. Fallen knights, warlocks, and ogre berserkers. All right, so that's our bandits and brigands. And then we have our dark elves. Dark elves is a smaller faction, I think the smallest faction. But you have your typical dark elf, your Medusas, an assassin, a captain, a sniper, a warlock, and a drider. And here I have my baggie of dark elves here. The driders are, of course, super cool. And then there's our assassin and our dark elf snipers. So some various dark elves. And we have our orcs and goblins, of course. Can't have a fantasy game without these guys. Our brutes, our regular orcs, our shamans. So they have magic users there. Orc chieftains, goblins, cave goblins, and goblin shaman. And there's all of our orcs and goblins in our orcs and goblins bag. We have our reptiles. So these would be like the old world, the saurians, raptors, basilisks, saurian priests, nagas, saurian elite, geckos, gecko assassin, a ward chief, a frogling, a salamander, another saurian, and a giant toad. And let's see here. My reptiles are here. And I think upon reflecting now, I think I put my basilisks in the beast bag. I don't remember putting them in my reptile bag. I actually don't remember seeing a basilisk standee, actually, and it's not listed on the monster table. Interesting. Michael, if you watch this video, please chime in on the basilisk. I don't remember seeing a standee for those. That might have to be something that we need to proxy. And then here, of course, we have our beasts. So the beasts. Yeah, this is just a huge, huge bag of different kinds of beasts and monsters. And I don't like how some of these are categorized as beasts. Like, I don't know, gnolls seem to be more humanoid to me. Or ettins. I think, ettins are kind of different than, and I think gnolls are maybe different than griffins, or with werewolves or something like that, or dragons. So I'm going to go through and separate out some of my more humanoid beasts, such as beastmen and gnolls and ettins, and put those in one bag. And then I'll put my more animalistic beasts, such as dragons and hydras and shamblers and salamanders and sphinxes and different kinds of wyverns, and I'll put those in their own bag. It'll just become easier for me to search through and easier to find things like centaurs, that kind of stuff. One faction I would love to see in an expansion, Michael, is some dark some dark dwarves, some chaos dwarves, something like that. Some kind of dark dwarf would be a really cool faction. Please make that happen. But here we have our beastmen, sphinxes, giant pox rats, common trolls, cave bears, dragons, centipedes, spiders, wolves, snakes, shamans, gnolls, giant rats, shamblers, hydras, satyrs, werewolves, centaurs, minotaurs, river trolls. The river troll standee looks great. I wonder if I can find... I think there's only one of those. There's the river troll. Super, super cool. But again, I just love this art. And then the only real issue I have with the included standees is for the quest monsters. There are a few named quest monsters that have their own standees, but there are a lot more that don't. And because they don't have a picture, I'm hoping that the quest that these are used on describes their physical appearance. For instance, I have no idea what Ista Rubit is. I know they attack as a beast, but what kind of standee should I use? Who is the master locksmith? What's the apostle has his own standee, but what does Felix? What does Ribbit look like? I have no idea. What does a what's a Trogskag? So I wish maybe these had pictures of what they were supposed to be, so it would be easier to proxy. Maybe Michael can put together a little chart for us so we can see what these characters look like, so we can grab the right standee when we need to, so we can make sure that we're fighting the right kind of, the right visual representation of these monsters. This is really the only part of this game so far that I've seen that has kind of fallen short of my expectations. I was expecting there to be some kind of standee representation for everything. I know that probably would have been I don't know, maybe 2 more sheets of standees. Maybe in the expansion, the Kickstarter for the expansion that will be coming up soon, maybe this will be something that we can add on. I think that would be fantastic. But anyways, that is enough coverage of League of Dungeoneers for now. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at some of the standees, at the mercenaries, at the heroes, and at a detailed look at some of the creatures you will be fighting in the Bestiary. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.